Hello and welcome to the Indie Bandits podcast. Happy New Year to you all. I'm Joe and today I'm joined by Jimmy.
Hello.
And by Archie.
Hello.
So on today's episode we're going to catch up. It's been a while. November was our last episode, so we'll catch up with what we've been playing and maybe some developments in the world of gaming that have happened in the last couple of months. And then we'll move on to the core of the episode, which is us chatting about Supergiant's Hades, the action roguelike dungeon crawler game of the year for everyone, apparently. And we'll chat about what we thought about that. But first, if you are listening, it'd be lovely if you would subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends about the podcast. You know what? If you don't have to wait until the end of the episode, you can leave a review now. 5-star. I think we've earned it, and that's fine. We'll wait. And now that you've done that, we'll move on with the episode. So, Jimmy, how was Christmas, New Year, and the holiday season in this hellscape we find ourselves in?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, obviously with all the restrictions in place, there's only so much you can do, but I can't really complain. It was pretty good fun. You?
Yeah, it's not been bad. A lot of time to play games. I took time off from my day job and gave myself a couple of weeks off over the holidays, and enjoyed a week of my own company playing games and watching TV. It's all good. And Archie, your New Year and Crimbo?
Pretty much the same. 2 weeks off. It was quite good. I rather enjoyed it.
So, did you get any games played over the holiday season, Jim?
No, not too many. Although we did start playing Don't Starve Together. That's pretty much it. I can't think, other than obviously the game we're discussing today, I can't think of another game that I've been playing all that much since then.
Well, Hades is a good time sink, but as you know, so is Don't Starve Together.
Yeah, that time flies on that one.
Yeah, for those who haven't played it, it's quite an old survival game. It's been out for a good number of years, and we're playing the co-op multiplayer version of it that we picked up for a couple of quid, wasn't it? It was quite cheap. We picked up because it was like 3 or 4 quid or something like that.
Yeah,
something to do.
Definitely a bit of a bargain.
Don't forget, James, as well. Me and you've been playing the indie critical darling Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took us by surprise, that one, didn't it? I think we're enjoying that. We're both enjoying that a lot more than we thought we would.
Yeah, I think half the enjoyment, though, comes out the fact that we're both not really very good at it, and it seems to wind everybody else up.
So how does it work? Is this? I assume it's a shooter. Right?
So yeah, it's like a 2-team shooter. One team is kind of defending these bombs inside kind of like a location. This location has numerous floors, numerous rooms, and it's up to them to defend this bomb that's about to go off in is it like a 5-minute, 3-minute timeline?
Yeah, I can't.
It's really short.
Is,
yeah. And then the other team, the attackers, they've got to find their way in, find out where the bombs are, and essentially either disarm the bomb or kill the opposing team. It's very quick. It's very fun.
Is it asymmetric? I'm guessing so. Does it work is Counter-Strike asymmetric as well, where you have like one team doing one thing and one team with a different objective?
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
How old is it?
It's a few years old now, isn't it?
4 or 5 years maybe at this point. Constantly getting updates though, and even the base package. How much do we pay for it? Like £8 or something. Even the base package, you're gonna get like plenty of time out of it. Providing you're playing with your mates. I wouldn't recommend this going solo. It requires a lot of teamwork and cooperation.
Even just then, I can't imagine you get much fun out of playing it on your own.
Yeah.
I think half the fun is like the stupid crap that happens during the game that's hilarious because you're kind of sharing the game with someone that you know and that you're having a laugh with.
So how many players are on a team?
5v5.
5 and 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how's the community then? That's
aggressive.
That's my big concern, because you said it's fun playing with your friends, but that's just the 2 of yous, and then there's definitely 3 other strangers, and then an entire I guess a team of 5 others doesn't matter.
We've had good and bad experiences.
Yeah, we've had some good teams and some dodgy teams, but I don't know, I think even when it's dodgy, it's funny.
We've been on teams where we've been totally absolutely useless at kind of succeeding in our objectives, and people are just sending jovial LOLs and stuff through the chat. But then you get the other side of the coin where it's people calling you every name under the sun because you didn't shoot this one guy with the 2 seconds he was in your reticle or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people do take it a bit too seriously, but for me and James, I think we just enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a fun game regardless of how serious the other players are taking it. It's just good fun. All the characters, you can unlock like different defenders and attackers that have different abilities in the game as well. And they're all cheesy names and very serious portraits and stuff, which are quite funny as well. So
a la Unreal Tournament.
less ridiculous than that, but arguably a little bit more embarrassing because you feel like they're not doing it tongue in cheek.
Yeah, like Unreal Tournament's definitely a bit kind of like nudge nudge wink wink, while Rainbow Six Siege feels like it's really taking itself a little bit too seriously.
Yeah, we might be getting that wrong, mind. The creators might have completely decided it's just a joke, all these people with their ridiculous names, but
Fuse.
Yeah,
it's just the community that's taking it far too seriously, and then
excellent co-op competitive shooter though. Like I'm very much enjoying it.
Very quick as well. Like that, if you die, it doesn't matter. Like a couple of minutes, you'll be back in another game.
Yep.
Oh, so is it like one death, one life?
And you die very, very easily on this. It's it's a couple of shots and you're down. But the plus of this is like when you're down, you still have some level of cooperation. Like when you've been killed, you can like operate the cameras throughout the level to try and maybe like pinpoint where people are, like the enemy is.
Yeah, you can ping people out where people are on the map as well, can't you, to help the people out who are still alive. So like, you can tell someone there's someone around the corner from where you are right now, type of thing.
Yeah, so you have it. You're not like completely out of the game because I think games that run like an elimination mechanic have to find a way to keep the players involved. That was the problem with Don't Starve Together. If one of you dies, you occupy the map as a ghost, and it's not very fun. You can't do anything. You can just float around the map and
try and find a respawn pointer.
Yeah, and reviving people is like a long, arduous process. So you don't really want to sit around for 2 hours whilst your teammates try and revive you. You know, you may as well just like call it quits there.
Yeah. But like I say, like even with Rainbow Six, say all the cameras have been shot out by the opposing team. Each round's only like 3 to 5 minutes. The turnaround on these games is very, very quick. 3 jump in, jump out. It's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
Good laugh.
Good. And anything else you've been playing, Archie, or you've just been Rainbow Sixing it the whole time?
Have I ever, pal? Well, I was one of the lucky sods who managed to get a PlayStation 5, like one of seemingly 10 in the wild.
I know. You and your brother.
Yeah. Somehow two PS5s to one household. I don't know how we've managed that, but we did.
I know, that sounds fair, doesn't
it? We had
you looking at us on your Mount Olympus of fucking next gen gaming, where we're in fucking Tartarus like fucking plebs on PS4s and PCs and that.
Archie just sleeps on a pile of PS5s.
Like I'd really. I mean, I would feel to understand why anybody would desperately want a PS5 right now. Like, the only reason I ended up wanting one was because my PS4 is really on its last legs. It crashes, it turns off all the time. So I kind of need a replacement for that. So, you know. But if you really want a PS5, you can easily hold off 6 months, I would say, to a year. There's nothing on it. So you're not really missing out on anything.
How's the backwards compatibility then? How do the PS4 games play on it?
Well, fine. Like I've only been playing a couple of. I've been playing more PS4 games on my PS5 than PS5 games, but so far, yeah, they just run as smooth as they would on the PS4. Load maybe a little bit quicker than they would, but yeah, so far no complaints with that.
Nice. But how's the controller? Because that seemed really gimmicky, but also like it could be really fun.
The problem with the controller right now is there's not enough games to fully like enjoy it. So the PS4, the Rumble. Essentially, the big gimmick about the controller is the rumble that's being introduced into it, and how the back two triggers are kind of like implemented into gameplay. So the rumble's just like more refined, and it feels like inside the controller there's many little motors rather than 2 big ones, which I think is how the standard controllers have always worked. So if you're playing a game like the demo game you get with the console, which is a fantastic little platform, it's really, really good
Astro's
fun.
Playground,
something like that, yeah. It's a lot of like game for like nothing. You're gonna get like good like 6 hours out of it, I think. But it's like, for instance, it's kind of like more immersive rumble. So if you're like, I'm trying to think of a good. It's hard to describe something like this without ever experiencing it yourself. So if you're running on kind of like sand, for instance, kind of the intensity of the rumble will change. And say, for instance, you're running along the sand and there's a fire to the left of you. The left side of the controller will sort of vibrate kind of a little bit more like a shimmer, if that makes any sense, to tell you that there's something to the left of you. So the controller has this kind of like omnidirectional kind of like vibration, it feels.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like if there's wind, like depending on which direction the wind is, that part of the controller will vibrate more intensely than say the other part would. It's one of those things that feels very gimmicky, but when you play it, it really is like it's not next level or anything, but it does add to the kind of enjoyment of what you're doing.
Yeah, like there's slightly more vibration on the left of my hand. I am genuinely there.
It does add to the quirkiness of things, like something like Astro's Playroom, which is essentially like a 3D Mario game. They've built it specifically to show you like what everything you could possibly do with this rumble, and it is cool. Like you'd have to be a hard cynic to think, oh, this is crap. No, it is fun. It adds to the immersion of the game, like it really does. But the thing that is cooler than that, this sounds lame because it's only a controller at the end of the day, is that the two triggers at the back, the L2 and R2 buttons, they kind of have like kind of resistance on them now. It's actually really fucking cool. It really, really is. It's so if you're like Demon's Souls has it very slightly. So when you're playing that, if you've got the drawstring on a bow and arrow, the controller will like tighten to represent kind of like the character like pulling back the string, rather than it just being this single kind of piece of pressure. Like it'll like tighten, like the button will tighten the further you draw that string back.
The resistance is variable in the buttons, right?
Yeah, yeah,
like
and you can turn it off if you don't like it. I think Sony have said like if you don't like this, fair enough, you can turn it off, but. I've heard on the Call of Duty game, I haven't played it myself, it really like adds to the immersion of kind of like pushing a trigger, you know? It's got that bit of extra like pull or kind of resistance when you're pulling on it. It's cool. No, it really, really is. It's I very, very, very much like it.
That's cool. Yeah.
I think it's because from everything I've seen, all the reviews, like everyone raves about Astro's Playroom or whatever it's called, and they say even though it's essentially a tech demo for the new features of the console, that it's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's a really, really good. They could have charged a tenner for that. Like, and that game is worth £10. You know what I mean? For a little kind of gimmicky. What does the PS5 do now? And yeah, but it's free. So like I imagine most people would enjoy it. It also gives a good idea, like that demo as well, like how fast that SSD is inside the PS5. I was mixed up. It loads like nothing else, which is great. Because loading times were becoming a bit longer, I noticed towards the end of the last generation of the PS4 games. But overall, very much enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I'm booting up GTA 5 now so that I can play it next week. No, that game's outrageously slow to load, but it is a big behemoth. But do you think all this like the haptic feedback and the HD rumble, because for one, I think the HD rumble already exists on the Switch. I think it's a very similar technology. The Switch has a really good rumble on it that feels like different things. They had that tech demo with like the ice cubes in a glass kind of thing. But is this not going to be a bit like when the Wii came out and Wii Sports was like the only game that really actually used any of the motion controls, and then when the Wii U came out, you had that Nintendo Land game, which was the only one that used the like asymmetric controller screen dynamic. And now is this going to be like, is anyone going to bother with it if they're like not exclusive to PlayStation?
That's the problem, I think, because if you look at it, like I think this is better than what the Switch has been offering in terms of kind of like the HD rumble feature. And I think the problem is, like, I think you're partially right, and it's probably like too early to say because I was kind of thinking the same thing, that these features are probably going to be like on Demon's Souls, for instance, essentially the only PS5 game that isn't on any other system except that console has it, but it's very, very, very faint. I wonder if developers are just going to kind of like pick and choose like how much they want it, because you got to remember most games these days are kind of cross-platform anyway. And it's somebody like Ubisoft for like Far Cry 7 or 6 or whatever, whichever one's coming up next. Are they going to really spend that much like development time like making the like all these rumble features very specific for the PS5 when that could add like they need additional programmers and all that? I mean, if they did, I'd rather they did, because like to the point of the Wii, like the gameplay and the motion control, like the motion controls for the Wii was what the gameplay of every game had to depend on for that thing. If that makes any sense. While the rumble is just kind of like in addition to what you're playing,
Yeah, it's a feature you can turn off.
Yeah, it's a feature you can turn off and on. The games won't live and die by rumble, and it's more just kind of that extra little thing that could that could potentially like elevate the experience for people. But there you go.
And you said there's no and there's not really any games for it yet other than those.
Well, it does actually have Demon's Souls, which is probably my favorite game. Like,
I've never been into the Soulsborne genre at all, but so I don't know. Like for me, I don't know if it'd be Like at the minute, I'm not looking that hard to buy one. I'm
Yeah.
not waiting for like drops or
I mean,
anything like that. Occasionally, I'll check to like maybe once a week I'll go. I wonder if places do have them in, or if they're still just like selling out the second they get a drop. But for me, it's until there is like a platform defining title, I really just I can wait. If you get me, all the games I want to play exist on the other platforms already.
yeah, no, 100%. Like, I mean, like, I think Demon's Souls is like an exceptionally good game. Like, but it really isn't £500 worth of like quality.
Isn't it like $550 by the time you've bought that and the game?
Probably,
if
yeah.
you buy
Yeah, something like that. It's insane. Very, very, very good game. I think it's unbelievably. It's the definitive version you should play of that game, with it being a remake. But it definitely isn't console worthy purchase just to play that.
Yeah. What about you, Jim? If you had any thoughts about buying the PS5, or you, like me, and wanting to just leave it?
Probably 6 to 12 months before I pick one up. I want to see a large number of games, some good games on sale, that sort of thing, a reduction in the price, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, you don't have a PS4 either, so you don't even have like the idea that your old catalogue of games will transfer over with it.
Last PlayStation I bought was in 2009.
Is it survived?
It has, actually. No. It's in the front room.
Ah, yeah?
We use it for access and Netflix and things at the minute, because we haven't had the front room updated yet, so it's there for Amazon Prime and Netflix.
I didn't realize the PS3 had Netflix on it. I can't remember the PS3 because I've had the PS4 for like 5-6 years now, and I could not remember if like the PS3 like had apps or shit you could install in it. I really can't remember like anything about like the back end of that other than the cross media bar nav thing it had.
Yeah.
Oh well, we'll wait, Archie. If you get bored, and since you have a spare PS5, do feel free to ship it over. I wouldn't like if someone sent me a PS5, well, yeah. I'd play it. I wouldn't be like, no, I'm not playing this. There's no games on it. I'd be like, no, I'll play.
I couldn't even imagine how much the posting and packaging on that thing would cut. That thing is an absolute
It's
monolith.
A big boy, isn't it?
It is fucking huge. Like,
oh well, lucky you, pal. Lucky you. Shall we move on to what's been happening in our absence, because it's been a couple months since our last podcast, and everyone's been fine. Obviously, there's been nothing major to worry about other than the Cyberpunk release, which I think we should have a wee chat about, because you could not miss that.
No.
Why was that game released in the state it was for consoles? At least I'm still not quite sure where people stand on the PC version, because it seems that the general consensus is leaning towards the PC version is fine. There's still problems, but that can be patched, but the console versions are essentially unplayable. So you've got it right, Archie.
I've got it. I haven't even right. PS5 runs it much better than PS4, so I can't talk about the PS4 version. But
you have a console version.
I have a console version, yeah, a PS4 console version, yeah. But I've installed it and I've uninstalled it, not because of like any criticism of the game or anything like that. I just kind of thought, if this game is really in the state everyone's claiming it to be, I'm not gonna like ruin. From what I've heard, it's a really good game, hidden under a slew of bugs. So I'm happy to wait and just keep that disc until the PS5 version comes out in like September or something.
Will they give you the PS5 version?
Yeah, it's a free upgrade as far as I'm aware.
Alright, cool. So it's not like, because that would be a really weird thing to do, just buy the PS4 version and be like, well, I don't want to ruin the experience, so I'll just buy the PS5 version. They've had a bad time, the CD Projekt Red, so I'll buy that game twice since they've had to issue all those refunds. Alright, well, it's cool you'll get the PS5 version when it comes out, and hopefully it's better than the PS4 and
well, we'll see.
Xbox One versions. But what did you make of all of it, Jimmy? The reaction of the studio and the fans and this whole kerfuffle.
It's going to be the poster boy for badly released games or games in technical difficulty, I guess, for a long, long time after this. So it's not going to shrug that off for a long time, even if they do manage to fix it. It's been such a poor release of a game. And it just, I don't know, like exactly the reason why people shouldn't hype things up, either for themselves or third parties, for fans, whatever it is. It just ends up... This is obviously a terrible version of it, but it never really works out when you hype something up for as long as the likes of Cyberpunk's been hyped up for. Like, there's no way that game could have been a 9 out of 10 and people probably would have been disappointed because the way people were talking about this game before release was just ridiculous. It just, the hype was it got out of control. I was looking forward to it, but I was trying to stay away from getting way too excited about it. And then, yeah, it just ends up being a mess, doesn't it? The developers of, I guess the studio, I should say, and probably not the developers, it'll be the people who have the money up top. What I don't get is, why didn't they just wait until they had the PS5 version ready?
Yeah, what I don't understand about all of this, and I think we on the podcast we often defend developers, and by developers, like you said when you corrected yourself there, when we say developers, we are not talking about a studio as an entity. We are talking about the people on the ground who sit at their desks, or last year probably a lot of them desks at home rather than in the studio, writing code, making art assets, testing the game. All these people are actually making the game.
All the grunt work.
Like we fully we fully support them. I think we all agree that these people do tough jobs.
But it's not their game either. Like, they've been asked to do something. Like, you've just been told you code this. It doesn't matter if that person thinks that's good or not. They've just been asked to do that. That's their job.
Exactly. And I think when we have all these issues, I think we need to separate the devs from the studio and like executive level decision making, because I think this is where AAA games become a bit horrible and either manipulative or predatory. I think this is executive level decisions. I don't think your average dev making a game is like, let's put loads of microtransactions in that everyone hates, or let's release this game even though I don't think it's ready because it needs to fall over the holiday period and be the big game everyone buys because the marketing cycle has reached fever pitch and now's the perfect time to get it out.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very important that people, especially the fans, I think it's very important that people can separate those notions in their minds, because I think that adds to it as well. Just the outrage exhibited by fans, both sides of the coin. There were people I saw people defending the game when people were criticizing it before it was released, which is insane. The game isn't out yet, and there were people defending it like religious zealots against people who were saying, you know what, this game might not be all that. It's been delayed a few times. There's signs that it might not be.
Like, the initial reviews coming out were saying that it was extremely buggy as well. So there's people starting to, I think rightly so, people who'd pre-ordered the game were probably sitting there going, oh dear, that doesn't sound good.
Exactly. And I think it's, I think there's blame on all sides. This is the way I see it. But the only people I wouldn't blame, again, is the devs. I feel like the devs are not involved in this. They're just making the product. And I feel you could probably ask most of them, especially on the QA side. I imagine if you'd asked any of them, the first week of December, should this game be released on console? They'd be like, no, it's a mess. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not that it wasn't a surprise. I can't imagine it was a surprise to them.
No, they were probably just bracing themselves for what was going to inevitably be an absolute shitstorm of opinions flying at them, because it's just complete mess, which is really unfortunate, because the game that was described a few years ago when I started paying attention to it sounded fantastic, and it sounded like it was going to do something a bit different and evolve the genre. But what it sounds like is that it's a good game, but very much within the same realms of possibility as as many games that we've already seen in that genre. It's not breaking any new ground or anything. Which that's absolutely fine. But then they really shouldn't have been hyping it up like that in the first place. And I think as well, we've discussed, I don't know if we've discussed this privately or on another podcast, but really long promotional marketing cycles, all that allows really is for fans to theorize way too much about what isn't going to be in the game. So and the longer that goes on, the more fantastical people's theories get. Oh my god, wouldn't it be amazing if you could do this, this, and this? And oh, look at that one screenshot. I think that means that you can do this in the game. And then when that inevitably is not the case, people are just annoyed. But they're annoyed at their own fantasy not coming true, not what the game has promised.
They've disappointed themselves with the notions they invented.
Oh yeah, and it's the way the information moves across forums and from one website to another and a blog comment section to another one to a YouTuber's channel, like rumor ends up doing the work of truth by the end of it. Like by about the 10th person who's basically reiterated this one rumor that was started on Reddit, it starts to sound like the studios actually come out and said that, even though the whole thing's just been rumor the entire time. But people, it starts to become like, oh, that's a real thing. That must be. I've now seen 15 different websites talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
but they're all just doing clickbaity stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think you also have to understand that like disappointment in how good something is not really quantifiable. Like it's subjective at the end of the day. So there's a difference you need to make between a game comes out and it's not what you expect it to be, and what the major criticisms of this game were is that it doesn't work. Like the product is not fit for purpose.
That's fair.
That's legitimate. I think that's legitimate, fair complaints. But I'd like to go to you with a question, Archie, because you know a bit more about QA than us. Surely, with a game that sells this many copies, there are things that, like, no matter what size of QA team you have, you can't find it all, right?
Well, for the issues they're seeing in Cyberpunk with the broader issues of frame rate, I don't believe for a second that the QA team hadn't logged that, despite what the director of the company came out and said. But whatever, I guess we'll just have to take his word for it. Maybe it didn't, but I find it very surprising. But let's look at an example where maybe there is a massive issue that's affecting X amount of players, but maybe that issue only came up 1 in 10 times for the QA team or something like that. That's that's pretty low chance of that happening if you look at 1 in 10 over something that happens like 1 in 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in a small QA team, 1 in 10 times, it could be a massive issue that we'll need looking into. But again, 1 in 10 times is going to take a long time to try and reproduce it. But if you have 1 million people buying the game, that's like what? Like 100,000 people are probably going to end up getting that issue. You know what I mean? When the more people who play it, the broader that issue will become. So stuff like that, I think, is like, can't be helped. There's the larger things that can't be helped where an issue is hard to find and rectify, but it could only be like really sourced when you have many, 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 many more people playing it to help you kind of like work out what it is. Your resources are limited in a small team. But for the issues with this, the biggest issue that the Xbox and PS4, not the original Xbox One and the PS4 are having, is that this game doesn't even run on frame rate, which is baffling because Sony and Microsoft both have standards that are kind of like set in place to kind of like keep stuff like that in check.
Like quality controls. Is it not called certification? You go through I know you go through a certification process.
Yeah.
Or I think they might have different names for different platforms. I don't know, but I think
they do.
I'm going to go with certification. You have to like test your game for the platform so that it meets certain criteria, and then they'll let you sell it on that platform
if you feel the criteria, you can't release it. Essentially, it's like like TV has this, probably like everything has this to a certain degree, and there's no way in hell this thing. These issues with the it's running at like 15 frames per second or something in many instances on like PS4 especially. There's no way this didn't come up beforehand. Not a chance. Like if it didn't, then it's either been overlooked, like it's been logged, and someone higher ups are saying don't give a fuck.
Is it maybe because they knew there was going to be like the PS5 release further down the line? They were like, oh well, we'll forgive them this transgression because everyone who buys it on the PS4 is going to get a free copy for the next console anyway. And maybe that, I don't know. I'm just trying to think why they would have missed that.
They were either testing it purely in engine, which will have different results to testing it purely on console, or they were testing it in such a segmented way on console that the linear approach to playing the game was probably overlooked. Yeah. I don't think, in all honesty, there's going to be a concrete, they fixed it for these PS4, Xbox One versions of Cyberpunk.
You think they're just going to have to, bury it, essentially?
They'll fix it, but it'll still be choppy and bad to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's not going to be a life-changing fix. It's going to be just an acceptable fix, and then they're going to try and move on, brushed under the carpet.
Yep.
So it goes back to why didn't they just
not release it
until the PS5? They could have looked at it and went, oh man, no, that's nowhere near good enough, right? Sorry everyone, it's actually going to be PS5 and next gen console.
No, I'm just going to say 100%. Obviously they would have sunk money on that, but at the end of the day, CD Projekt's worth a couple billion and a bit, whatever it might be. I'm sure it would have been better for them to sink the money on that PS4 and Xbox One version for, retaining some good faith in the consumer.
I was going to say how in sort of money terms and reputation terms, it's been a bad idea to have to have released a product that was nowhere near up to scratch. Like it from what I've seen, it looked like it was produced by like people who, this is like one of the first times they're making a game and they've just made some really basic errors, and it just looks awful from what I've seen.
Even the PS5 version is spotty. Like, I see it on install. I did play it for like an hour before I saw a couple bugs, and they were like funny bugs, but it still doesn't like run on frame rate. Like PS5, you'd think, 60 frames per second. That's what it should achieve, really, because it's old hardware, old software running on new hardware. Demon's Souls runs on 60 frames per second without a hitch, from what I could see. Runs beautifully. Cyberpunk is an older game running on this new hardware, and it still chokes in places. And it's like, you're going to need like 10, 15 technical artists just to go in and like just gut this game to make it run properly.
Yeah. I can only imagine that that this whole thing has come down to, like you said, with like the rumor mill, James. There's the potential that through the company, everyone kind of like told little white lies.
Yeah.
Or they knew fully and they made a calculated decision, which obviously is backfired now, but they made a calculated decision going, you know what, we'll just release it because we'll make more money than it'll hurt our reputation. Like, there's probably a decision went that somewhere in a boardroom, someone went, you know what, we'll get away with it on PC, the console versions are shit, whatever, we'll make enough money, we're laughing, kind of thing. You know, like, I feel it's like, just fucking do it, we don't care that much. The damage to our reputation will be offset by how much fucking money we're about to make. And then they went, right, let's just release it now. Yeah. Get it out there before Christmas and we're done. We're all happy. We're all lining our pockets. All investors are happy. And then they probably thought, you know what, people will be mad for a bit and then they'll get over it.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, I agree, but it could be any number of things. It could be the most cynical thing that first kind of came to my head was, and I hope this wouldn't be the case, but it wouldn't be surprised me if just the higher-ups not getting the information they want due to kind of, I don't know, certain people want to like look like they're meeting their deadlines, you know what I mean? Kind of failure of, I think you said it, like failure of communication and things like that. I do think it's a big shame because I was very much looking forward to this, and it does seem that despite all the issues, if you're somehow able to get past them, that this game is like good and enjoyable and worth playing. But it is a shame to see these bugs are kind of ruining what could otherwise be an excellent product.
Yeah.
Well, shall we leave it there and talk about something a bit more positive and move on to our game for today?
Right.
Let's do it. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've all been playing a cheeky bit of Hades, and I did mention that it's an action RPG roguelike from the guys who brought you Bastion, Transistor, and not our favourite, Pyre, which we but I think we're all in agreement that we like the other two, right? We're all fans of Bastion and Transistor, right? We've all played them. We all thought they were pretty good games,
especially Bastion.
Yeah, really
Bastion's definitely my favourite of the bunch.
I see. I'm more a fan of Transistor, but I lean into the whole like sci-fi thing more than I do the kind of like folksy fantasy crack on. But either way, they're both really good games, and I preferred Transistor because of the fact that it was more like, it was a little bit more cerebral. It was less visceral. I liked the planning out battle system they had, but that didn't mean I didn't like Bastion. Like I still enjoy button mashing on Bastion for a bit. But either way, they've got a good track record, and for me, initial thoughts was they've done it again. Here's another good game of the level, if not better, than the two we like.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's fantastic. It's a return to form for me after the disappointment of Pyre. And when we say disappointment, I mean purely just the gameplay. Everything else about Pyre was spot on. The music was good. The aesthetics were good. The character design was good. I just didn't like the gameplay. But Bastion, Transistor, and Hades are exceptional games from a smallish studio, I guess, that are, I mean, producing some really good stuff.
I would partially agree.
Yeah, but I think we'll get into this in a bit because this is down to when we talk about the gameplay and how it works. So, as a quick explainer, if you've been living under a rock or being bombarded with bad news about Cyberpunk, the game features like a similar kind of combat system to Bastion, but has you attempting runs to escape the underworld. And you play as Zagreus, who is the prince of the underworld and Hades' son. And as we discuss this, there probably will be very light spoilers, but I don't want to get into the actual like story elements themselves. We will talk about like how the story's presented and stuff like that, but I don't think we need to go into too many details.
No.
But essentially, Zagreus is throwing a teenage hissy fit. This is all I seem to get from like the game, is that he's just like, I hate it here. You're really mean, Dad. I've had enough. So he's gonna leave, and you go through randomly generated or organized rooms, which they tie into the story that apparently it was just designed that way, which is a nice kind of tongue-in-cheek way to explain the roguelike elements to it. But you try to escape. If you die, you end up back at square one in the House of Hades, or your dad's office, and you try again, and there are like permanent upgrades that will help you. So each time you play, it should get a little easier. And I think this is what you were wanting to mention, Archie, because I know you're not a fan of roguelikes in a sense, and this game obviously is full on repeat, lather, rinse, repeat kind of gameplay.
I think if I was to quickly sum up my thoughts on this game, I think I like just about everything bar that side of it, the go in, get so far, die, go back to the beginning again. I felt, for me personally, even though I loved how they kind of integrated that into the story and the plethora of different things the characters say when you return to Hades, like is it Hades or Tartarus?
House of Hades.
You know, like
it's the House
of Hades. Again, I think
is his office.
A mammoth amount of work went into that, and the writing, like all these games, is like fucking excellent. But I could only play this for a short amount of time, and I was like, I've died, and I really can't be bothered to go do all of that all over again. Like this, for me personally, it just feels I'm not really ever progressing for so. Maybe I know I technically am, but I don't feel like I feel like I'm never really getting better at the game, if you know what I mean. But I don't like procedural level generation either. I think the lack variation are interesting kind of structures, for the lack of a better word. Every stage just kind of felt like the same thing for me, and I think that was my biggest problem with it.
Well, how did you find the levels, Jim, and the designs? They're all randomly generated, I guess.
Yeah, I can fully understand why you'd get frustrated or run out of patience with, especially if you've gone on a long run and then you've ended up back at the start and you think, oh god, like I don't necessarily feel all that enthusiastic about jumping straight back in and going through it again. But the way they encourage you to replay the game over and over again by giving you more snippets of story and expanding the character's background and the background of every other character in the game as well. Like each of them have multiple stages of interaction, I think you might call them that. And more unlockables as well, so you can level up your character and his permanent abilities. You can unlock new weapons, you can unlock new items to help you on the way up. So the more you play the game, the more powerful you become, and the further you can get every single time. But I do, I mean, I've been on a couple of runs myself where I feel like I was gonna maybe complete the game, and then you die and you end up back at the start. It's quite frustrating when that happens. Like, oh god, that is really annoying.
I'll make a quick comparison, to my favourite game ever. So, like, Demon's Souls has a similar structure, but it's not procedure generated, and it's not a roguelike game.
No.
But they have the really harsh kind of sensibility as well, where when you die, they send you...
You lose it all.
You lose it all. You don't lose it all. You keep all the stats you currently have. If you're a level 24, whatever, you're still a level 24 when you die and respawn. But everything you've collected up until that point, you lose, and you have that opportunity to go get it again. If you fail then, you lose it indefinitely. But what I like about the structure they implemented into it is that because everything's very defined, and it's not procedural, and the enemies are always going to be in the same place, more or less doing the same thing. And Hades has the opposite, where it's going to be maybe different set of enemies or similar type of enemies at different stages, and the levels are going to be slightly different. What I like about Demon's Souls, for me, that this game doesn't do and other roguelikes don't do, is I feel like I have the opportunity to learn from my mistakes. While with a roguelike, it's more on the look of getting the right, like, I don't know, just clicking the buttons fast enough to win. That's what it felt like to me. Winning never felt like I earned it. Winning a lot of the time felt like I got lucky, rather than any skill being implemented into it. Like
this was one of my main cons of it. I've noted down here that escape attempts and success rely heavily on randomness and less on player skill. Yeah. Now, obviously, there's the speed runs of people completing this in 25 minutes, and that's a lot of skill. But well, I think we should mention this because it does work, like you said, James. There's loads of unlockables and stuff like that. But before you start, you pick from one of 6 weapons, I believe. There are 6 main weapons in the game. There's a good mix of them as well, which I do like. There's a sword, a spear, a bow, a shield, some gauntlets. Are they gauntlets? Armored gloves?
Yeah, they're like armored, like boxing glove, like fist things, aren't they? Like clawed fist
they're called they're the unfortunately named twin fists. And then there is a gun. So you have there's a good amount of options to pick, and I definitely have my favorites that I like going back to. But you pick that at the start, but then as you progress, each encounter, as they're called in game, has a reward, and this is either like monetary. There's certain currencies in game that when you go back to the start, you can upgrade things and upgrade aspects of your character, or basically turn the odds in your favor for your next attempt. But there's also currency you can use during the run. There's power-ups and stuff you can buy during an escape attempt, and there's all these different things. But it did seem that a lot of it depended on like which Olympian gods came down and met you and what they were offering at the time.
Yeah.
And they're called boons in the game, but they're essentially just like your abilities. And one time a god can come down and offer you an amazing ability that works really well with you, like the weapon you've chose to do this run on.
There's a good synergy with the weapon.
Yeah, and other times I feel you don't get that. Yeah. For me there were certain combinations where I'm like, I've got a good, right from like the first room, you're like, I've got a good feeling about this combination of abilities and weapon is gonna really work out.
Yeah, I think that was maybe another factor for me. I didn't like that RNG random number generator. I only found that out the other week. That aspect of it, I didn't like at all. It's kind of like it doesn't allow me to play in a style that I would like to play. If that makes any sense, like
at least not every time. That's my question. I was going to say, did you ever feel that you'd have a good run and you'd have a good combination, and you're like, I want that build again because now I can apply my improved skill to it and do it again, and then the game's like, no, you can't. Sorry, you're going to get some random shit that you could be better, could be worse.
I'd counter that by saying, like, yes, fully, I would agree with that, but the fact that there is the randomness in it, so you start with the sword, don't you? So we'll talk about the sword. Yeah. You do one run and you happen to get a specific number of boons from some specific gods, and you go on a good run. You think, I'd love to have another go with that exact set of upgrades. Then you go back and you have a different set of upgrades, but that means within the same weapon, playing the same game, you can have a very different experience. Yeah. And you have to change your strategy and your play style and your skill set to match a new combination of items and weapons. So the game's always changing, and it doesn't allow you to just get to that point where you've perfected the exact same move pattern over and over again, to basically just repeat that all the way through the game, which I think would make it, to be honest, once you got to that point, I wouldn't see the point in playing it. Yeah. I'd just be like, this is just a rinse and repeat. I'd rather have I actually found this game, like, it's challenging. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And every single time you play it, it is really challenging. Even if you think, like, God, I've got a good weapon, I'm pretty good with this weapon. Maybe you get a couple of good bonuses at the start, but, like, it can just throw a wrench in at any time. And it is really challenging. I do like that aspect of it. At the same time, I can fully understand a 20-minute run, getting pretty much to the end and then dying. You're like, oh my god, okay, I'm turning this off for now. I cannot go through that again.
Yeah, I think each time I played, I never did more than 2 runs in a single play session. Yeah. In most cases, I would do 1 run, because I feel that can be anything from a good, if it goes badly, you're probably done in like 5-10 minutes. If it goes well, it can be anywhere from like 20 to 40 minutes, and and that's a good amount of time to play, because it doesn't let up either. It's no. there is a bit of like dialogue and exposition, but that tends to happen between escape attempts, and I'm quite happy for that to be separate. Like, I like the idea that like you have the House of Hades at the start of every attempt, where you can go chat to a few people.
Yeah,
and I like that. I like getting like drip fed this exposition. But when you were talking about how it mixes up how you play, this was one of my criticisms about the gameplay itself. That the combat, though it's like fast and fun and visceral, with any given build, I found myself like working out a combination of button presses, essentially like a combo that worked, and then just repeatedly hammering those. And after the last run I did, my hand was sore.
Yes.
Like,
I got that.
you know, like you've been playing tennis or something, like you've got carpal tunnel or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because all I've worked out is with this like combination of boons and weapon, that it's good to like do something like X square square triangle circle and then move and then just keep doing that. And I just like do that in circles around the map to kill all the enemies. I'm like, see, this is where it gets repetitive. Unfortunately, as you said, James, by changing it when I died, that means I can't do that. But I found myself doing that for every single escape attempt. I'd work out what the perfect combination of buttons were to do maximum damage and then get out of there before I get hit.
I think
and then
that
just do that over and over.
Yeah, that does happen sometimes. There was one time when I got an upgrade to the dash, that at the end of the dash, he did like splash damage.
Yeah.
Then I also got the same, like a boon in the same one to be able to dash 6 times in a row.
Oh, jeez.
So all I was basically doing was dashing, essentially around that. But I do like how they did. The different levels and bosses are different enough that if you come up with one strategy against one set of enemies on one level, it doesn't necessarily work that well. Like, for example, the dash one, I repeatedly found myself falling in the lava all the time because I was just out of control dashing.
Yeah.
And it was causing me damage to do that. And I was starting to think, like, I wonder if I just pull back on hitting the dash button here. And just, I found that even if you have a combination that gets you through, say, Tartarus, the first level,
area,
very quickly, it might not help you so much in the
in like the later segments.
Asphodel level, where I found the enemies are far. They jump around a lot. They move around. They're very rapid in their movements in the second level, and it's a bit more tricky.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that throw projectiles in the second phase as well. There's a lot of guys with like little grenades and stuff like that, which I think that's like a good combination. Obviously, there's some intelligent design behind this. Obviously,
they've worked it out. Yeah, they've tried to stop someone from just going, right, I've figured out from the first encounter the move that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do that all the way through to completing the game. Like, you have to change it up. Most of the time, you have to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, and there's also a thing I noted down. There's a thing in the game called the List of Fates, which is essentially like an achievement list.
Yeah.
And if you meet certain criteria, it rewards you.
Yeah. With
like money or darkness or all these different like in-game currencies essentially. And I found when I was picking power-ups, just having this like list that basically says if you do this, you're fated to pick this one, even though I didn't want to, because I saw the little like scroll icon next to it going, the game says I have to like try out all the different stuff because it'll reward me the next time I die. It's a nice little mechanic to force you to switch it up, and it does this definitely a lot. And even though players usually don't know what's best for them, like you said, if the game just let you keep the build that worked, I'd miss out on so much content. And Transistor did this as well. They had this in where, I think in Transistor, if you died, instead of dying, it would remove one of your abilities and block it out and disable it until like you hit a certain checkpoint. And that was a really cool mechanic, and they're very good at doing this thing that you think you won't like, but it's actually better for you in the long run, because I've definitely come across a few weapons and combinations and boon options that I wouldn't have otherwise picked and have discovered because of this. Even though you do have to do a few. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you got to repeat the game. But I just love how they've basically encouraging you not to just see this as a game to complete as quickly as possible, but actually try and experience it and go through and talk to all the characters, unlock all the boons and the weapons, like get the full backstory, meet all the different people, because it's random encounters on the way through the game that not every single run will you see the characters, but there are various characters that help you out along the way, and they've all got backstories that tie in with people in the House of Hades as well. And it's just like it's a really nice way of basically the gameplay we came up with was to just you have to run through these levels, like simple, but let's try and build a game around that, knowing that people, barring getting extremely lucky or being just some sort of genius and at games, you are going to be playing this game multiple times all the way through, and it just rewards you with more and more content every time you play the game. I think it's really cool.
How did you find the story, Archie? Because I know you said you're not a fan of roguelikes, and I found that the story was probably one of the best like pillars of the game. I think it holds up for me, the story holds up the rest of the game, and it's other like minor flaws that we've mentioned.
Yeah, like absolutely. Like I think I wouldn't say this saving grace at all, because I do think there's a lot to love in this game, even if I wasn't the biggest fan of like the combat. But I think, like, story aside, I think they did like an excellent job with all the characters. Like they have, like I said, every time you die, you go to speak. Do you speak to like Hermes? Is he the one you first speak to in the River of Styx, or is it some Hypno? Sorry, yes. Yeah, and every time you go see him, he's got something new to say. And the first boss is at Megara, and every time you
the Furies,
you encounter her, she's got something unique to say as well. And it wasn't so much the story that was capturing me; it was just kind of the amount of character they had put into like every single character, I guess, into this game. And like the dialogue list for this game must be like unbelievably large.
I have this. It's 300,000 words, and apparently it's a bigger script than Pyre had, and Pyre was all exposition. This is a game that has more like story elements and dialogue to it than their story-driven game. But what made it so good for me is with Pyre, we didn't like the gameplay that much, and it was very much like a lot of reading exposition and then playing a little game. I think the balance here between like action and exposition really works for me. And there's an excellent YouTube video on how their dialogue system works on the People Makes Games.
Oh, I'd love to see that actually.
YouTube channel that I recommend, and explains how it works. And basically, the Too Long Didn't Read version is that they have the dialogue system, and there's random dialogue options that can be called upon at any point. But there's also unlockable dialogue options that will be triggered when certain conditions have met.
Do those happen when you, because there's the gifting system as well, like, and is that when they unlock? Because I mean I'm not aware if I came across any secret ones, so I'm just curious now because.
So basically, you've got like generic chit chat, I guess, at the lowest level. But if you go up to a character and you've met a certain criteria, like you're carrying a particular weapon, then the dialogue system will have that option supersede the dialogue it was initially going to give you, like the general chit chat. But there's also things where if you've done something like really important in the game, that'll supersede all of that. So instead of the character going, "Oh, I see you using your dad's old sword," for example, that would supersede the like "Hello Zagreus" chit chat. But if you've just beat like one of the mini bosses, it goes, "Oh, I see you've fought this person," for example, and that would supersede that. And they have this like whole tiering system so that the dialogue always feels like sort of like fresh and relevant. It's never like the arrow in the knee shit or anything like that. It's not just random banter. It's always like relevant.
I mean, one of the things I really did like about it is the somewhat meta element of the game, where it's obviously a roguelike, and whenever you die, it's just that whole idea of dying and being reborn, like the River of Styx, or I'm assuming it was that, is just a part of the story and of the game. And I think that really helped kind of like elevate this above the other roguelikes I played, where you essentially die and go back to the main menu and it'll literally start all over again.
And it doesn't tell you why. There's no contextual reason.
Yeah, like there's context.
As if it's the first time every time.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there might be another roguelike out there that does something similar.
Rogue Legacy would be my example, because in that one, when you die, it's actually like your kin.
Okay, that's quite clever. Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's really good. I think Zagreus also like talks to the narrator as well.
Yeah. On top of the dialogue, like the acting for each of the actors as well is absolutely fantastic. Like, you believe those characters. I think it was you, James, said this when we were streaming it. It feels like that one of those mid-90s Disney films, like Kirkley specifically, not just because of the setting, but because of the tone and the art to a certain degree. And
it definitely, the characters are all fully fleshed out, and the voice acting's really good, and it's very immersive when you're playing it, despite the fact that the actual gameplay and the loop of it is extremely basic. The game feels really immersive. What could be like a very casual, superficial experience is a lot deeper because of the other things that obviously Supergiant are extremely good at.
I was going to say that's their hallmark, isn't it? I was just watching the zero punctuation on it earlier, and the mention of that was Supergiant likes to experiment with the ways you can tell stories through the medium of computer games, and they do that incredibly well in every way, shape, or form. And that they always have story-driven games, even when it's like something you would think would just be like an afterthought. This, like, you could ignore all the story in this game if you really wanted to. You could just go, I only care about the mechanics, I only care about the fights, and I'm going to just keep trying to improve my character, and I don't care what anyone has to say. But I think it's so engaging that the first thing I do before any run is talk to every single character in that area. Even go up to the... there's like an Employee of the Month board in one of the rooms, and it randomly changes, and it's got a little star next to it and a picture of one of the people you met, and Zagreus will be like, ah, yes, the duty-bound Gorgon or whatever is Employee of the Month today. Good for her, kind of like random like shite like that. And it's all very engaging that this is a house, like a living, breathing house that operates, and Hades is sat there, which I think is true to mythology. And James, you're the in-house Indie Bandits mythology expert, at least in comparison to me and Archie. Hades has a tough job and is surly about it. I feel like that is something in the actual mythology. He doesn't like the fact that everyone else is on Mount Olympus having a good time, and he's sat dealing with like the paperwork of the dead, essentially. And in this game, they've put that like really on the nose, that he's just constantly sat behind his desk being like, get out me hair, Zagreus, I'm busy. Instead of trying to escape, could you not help me with this shit?
Yeah. He's not usually a very happy character in the mythology, because he's been given the crappiest job. When they split up the rules of heaven, earth, and the underworld, he pulled the short straw. And he has to look after it all. He doesn't particularly like his job, and he becomes quite distant from the other Olympian gods as well, which again is played on in the story a lot. Which I think obviously they've taken some liberties from the story. Of course they have. It's a game, and it's
several thousand years after the source material. I think it's time for it to evolve a little bit at least.
But it's still quite faithful to some of the characters are quite faithful to the original representation of the characters. Maybe a little bit less bloodthirsty and weird, but
I don't know. A few of them you'll meet, like Ares.
Ares, yeah. But even he's been toned down. I mean, he doesn't get on with anybody in the myths either. If anything, I think they like him less than they like Hades. Everybody, so but, there's only so much you can do.
I think, like, even though we say the story is like the story elements are good and all the stuff that holds it up and how like fleshed out it is excellent. I would make an argument that isn't the whole like Greek mythology thing a little overdone?
There have been a few games, but this is like, I do quite like that. This is a different take on it.
Yes, it's not the like swords and sandals version of it.
Yeah, usually you play as like a mortal hero who gets blessed by the gods. Here you are a god trying to escape the underworld over and over and over again, and you've got a dodgy relation. Like, instead of being, instead of viewing the gods as like these magical otherworldly beings, you are actually part of the family in this one, and it's a different take on it. But I know what you mean. There have been a few games, and obviously beyond that, TV shows, movies. It's definitely a very popular set of stories to try and recreate for
copyright free purposes as well. You can't get in any trouble by touching it. And I guess their approach to it sets it out.
Like, this feels like totally unique with regards to how they've approached their Greek mythology. Like, to me, yeah, it's fine. It could have. I'm glad it is Greek mythology. It feels refreshing to me for some reason. It's like,
yeah. So to sum up, I think the major question is, actually we sort of know how you feel about roguelites. So I don't think this question maybe will be as pertinent to you. But where would you rank it against Supergiant's other games?
Second bottom.
No. So it doesn't supersede. I assume this means it doesn't supersede Bastion and Transistor.
I have not played Transistor in so long that I can barely even remember it. So I'd have to play that again to think of this list. But I'm guessing right now my first thought, only on kind of like an entertainment level, not a criticism of anything else, just because on a general gameplay level, second bottom for me right now. I could probably change my mind
because of how strong like the roguelike elements are.
And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's crap or anything like that. I'm just saying it's.
I mean, it's third out of a list of 4 arguably very good games. Even though the 4th one, I don't think any of us particularly liked. Pyre. But what about you, James? Would it supersede any of the I guess the 2 favorites? Would you say it's better than Bastion or Transistor?
I don't know. I'm still playing this one, but this one obviously gets bonus points for the setting for me.
Already a 10.
But then Bastion has bonus points because that was the first Supergiant game I played, and I was so like pleasantly surprised by it, and I enjoyed it so much. Like all the other games, I'm kind of going into expecting it to be good. That one was like a brand new experience, so that one has bonus points for that reason. I don't know. I'd probably put it on par at the minute with Bastion. 1 and 2, they'd be my 1 and 2 so far.
Okay. I already mentioned that I prefer Transistor to Bastion just because of the setting, and I liked the battle system where it was sort of turn-based but not really, and also these it had some really good mechanics for like upgrading your weapons. There was this combination system I really liked, so I think that would still sit in number 1 spot for me. And I did like the linear approach. Like, I'm a bit like you, Archie. I don't love roguelikes, and I particularly don't like rogue-lites as much because, as we mentioned, I think it sort of negates player skill quite a lot. And I do like something where I can get better at it. You know, I'm the kind of sad person who can sit and do like laps on Gran Turismo hoping to find like a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's like any new skill you learn, like playing a musical instrument as well. You'll like pick up a guitar and try and play a new song, and you won't get 4 bars in without making a mistake. But next time you'll make it up to the verse or the chorus, etc., etc.
Yes,
and I don't feel like Hades with its random like generations and the random boons and the random builds, as much as that like mixes things up, I don't know if I'm ever getting any better at the game itself.
It's not a bad thing, and I'm kind of on the same side of that. Those are just things I generally don't like in games. I mean, there's some exceptions. I probably like them in some other way, but I'm not to say that those things made this game bad or anything, because they definitely didn't. To me, it's too much of what I don't like in similar genres, or not similar genres, but kind of similar mechanics, and like Destiny and all that, where you're kind of grinding out your character in the hope you get like that extra. Like in this game, it would be that extra key to unlock something in the the XP rack or whatever it was in Zagreus's room. And that random number generation stuff I generally don't like.
Yeah, I feel like the way I see it is that if like Bastion or Transistor had been like built in the same way as this game, or if Hades had been not a roguelike or roguelite to be more technical, if Hades had not been a roguelite, I think it would have been like almost a perfect game for me. And then I would probably be complaining about how it's just like Bastion and Transistor.
Yeah.
You know, I never know. I'd be like, oh man, couldn't they have done something like, linear story, you do this,
couldn't
you do
they have
that.
tried out one of these roguelikes?
Why didn't they try out a roguelike? Yeah, they've been doing this, like, at least they changed up what they're doing, and you can see from like everything, the visuals, the arts, the storytelling, everything is like, you can see that team getting better at what they do.
Yeah.
And I think for some players who like this kind of genre and gameplay style, this is why it's like, this game is still excellent for people who aren't even that into roguelites or don't particularly like the style. And that's just a personal approach. There are people who are probably like, oh man, I wish you could get more depth out of Bastion and Transistor by having like roguelite elements, and now they're laughing.
Yeah,
because they've got this like 20 quid game which is just
I would
sublime.
say if you have never played a roguelike or roguelite before, play this one first, because I think it'll be probably the best first impression you would get of that genre, especially of the ones I mean, I've played a few roguelikes and roguelites and I've never got into them, but this is the one where it nearly twisted the handle, or however I want to say it, into like, oh, maybe I'll give another one a go.
I don't know if I'm right on this one, but so like, just say you're playing, like a traditional linear style game, and you're going from start to finish, and there are like optional paths to take. It's mostly linear, but there are optional things you can do throughout the game to unlock something or talk to someone or get a side quest. Yeah. And you go through the game and you don't do all of the things, and you've complete the game, and you might only ever play that game one time, and you've missed out. I feel like this game, because of its mechanic, you can quite easily end up unlocking all of the content throughout the game whilst still playing the same run through, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like you're not going to complete this game and be like, oh shit, I never did that thing way back on like the 3rd level where I was going to unlock that piece of content. Like this one, you just go back through and you'll have a chance to do that. And I quite like that this is essentially a game that will encourage you to unlock everything they've built into the game, and I do quite like that.
Yeah, it definitely has the sort of a once you've finished, you can still keep playing it kind of thing, where it's like, if you are the kind of person who's like, yeah, I've done it, I'm happy, I'll leave it there. but also you can go, no, I can keep digging. I think it has that option for a lot of different type of players, which I think is its strength. You could be like someone to beat it in a small amount of runs, and someone who spends hours where you're not actually trying to complete the game, you're actually trying to meet all the people, which I find myself, when I get a bad draw, I'm kind of like, okay, this run isn't to beat the game. This is a run where I'm gonna meet people or gift people some stuff, or choose the route that takes me to like a tortured soul rather than a room that'll unlock more currency. Do you know what I mean? Like
pick a boon that I haven't picked before that I wouldn't normally
Exactly.
pick and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's like even if you feel like, oh well, I'm not going to complete it this round, you're still going to unlock more of the game and get more content out of it. And I think it's really clever, the game design that they've managed to put into this. I think it's I really
I think
enjoy
as
it.
well, what's good about this game is that it's kind of one of those games where it's quite inclusive of any type of person who wants to play games. Like in the way that I mean that if you're somebody who just plays games for a couple of hours a week, this game kind of, you can do that with this game. You don't have to like spend hours and hours and hours on it in order to kind of like have some fun with it. But if you do spend hours and hours, you put your person who plays games like 20 hours a week or something, this game also like allows you to essentially do that as well.
It rewards you for it.
You can play a game for a single run. I think like what I imagine all three of us kind of did. Or you can play a game for 20, 30 runs in a row if you were so inclined.
And it would be worth it. I feel like you don't feel any minute is sort of like waste in this game. You get as much out of it as you want to put in.
Exactly.
Definitely.
The recommendation round, are all going to recommend it, or?
I would 100% recommend this.
I feel there's a reason everyone's calling it game of the year and stuff like that.
It's not just hype, unlike another game we discussed. In this.
No, I think it's. I think Hades is the real deal, and if you are interested in sort of like getting into indie games, Supergiant is like probably the gateway studio.
Yeah, definitely.
They'll be AAA before you know it. Like they'll be AAA in the next few years, I imagine.
I hope not. I kind of hope they stick to like, in terms of like, I don't know, creative integrity. Easier said than done. By the way, I am not saying that like this would be. But I kind of hope they just decide to keep the studio small and keep producing these gems every so often, because it's nice. It's refreshing to see like a really polished, high-end game coming from an independent studio.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Despite what I've said before, I still think it's a game worth picking up and playing, because I think most people will probably enjoy this.
Well, I guess from there we'll just we'll thank everyone for listening and celebrating indie games with us. Remember, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and join us in our Discord if you're a dev or just a fan of indie games. You can show off what you're working on, or just share some cool stuff with us and have a bit bants. And don't forget, obviously, to subscribe to this podcast and give us that wonderful 5-star review, and tell your mates. Tell your mates you can listen to three Geordies bantering on about games.
Away.
Ta-ra!
See ya.